During a phase when my family was facing challenges, I found myself living alone in a small apartment. My parents were going through a rough patch, so I took in my 6-year-old brother, Tom, while they sorted things out. Luckily, I had the flexibility to work from home, so caring for my little brother wasn't too burdensome. Having him around actually made me feel better, knowing he wouldn't be exposed to the tension between our parents during this time. This particular incident occurred within a short 2-month window. About 2 weeks into this arrangement, my job called for an in-person meeting scheduled for the second half of a Friday afternoon. These monthly meetings were normal for us, a chance to discuss project progress face-to-face. With my brother being so young, I needed a babysitter while I was out. I contacted a local babysitting service that I found online and booked a sitter for the time frame needed. I didn't specify a particular person, I was just glad they had someone available. Come Friday, Chris, the babysitter, arrived at the apartment building around noon. I let him in, and after a quick introduction, I left for my meeting. Chris seemed like a caring and friendly individual, just what you'd expect from a babysitter. The meeting took a few hours, and by 5:30 p.m., I was heading back home. In-person meetings always drained me because I was so accustomed to working from home. The drive back felt long and tiring. I parked, went upstairs to my apartment, and unlocked the door. Instantly, something felt off. The lights were all off, and an eerie silence hung in the air. "Chris," I called out, a knot of worry forming in my stomach. I turned on the lights and anxiety hit me full force. Hastening down the hall to the living room, I saw my brother sitting on the couch. I rushed to give him a tight hug, then questioned him about Chris. "He left," Tom murmured, his voice barely audible. He didn't say anything more. I called the babysitting company, but they hadn't heard from Chris either. Attempts to reach him went unanswered. They apologized and refunded my payment, though it did little to ease my unease. Fortunately, nothing appeared to be missing from the apartment, and my brother was safe. After an hour, I made dinner for us and let Tom watch a show before bedtime. As I washed the dishes, I realized something that chilled me to the bone. I had to unlock the door when I returned home, and I never gave Chris keys. The bolt lock on the door required a key or activation from inside the apartment. Setting the dishes aside, I took Tom with me and left the apartment. We sat in my car while I called the police. While on the phone, I noticed a movement in the blinds of my bedroom window. A minute later, Chris hurriedly exited the apartment building and drove away. The police arrived, and later that night, Chris was found in his apartment. Chris concocted a story, but it didn't hold water and failed. It was clear he had bad intentions. The police found a travel kit in his car containing survival tools, blankets, and provisions. Additionally, his apartment had been emptied, indicating a premeditated plan. It was unnerving to realize he might have had sinister plans for me that night. This experience remains one of the most disturbing close calls I've ever encountered. Thankfully, it was just a close call. I'm grateful it didn't go further, considering what could have been, had I not acted in time. Back when I was around 10 or 11 years old, I was living at the end of a quiet neighborhood road. This road was bordered by a huge forest. Me and my friends used to play games and take walks in those woods behind my house. Among all the forests I've seen, this one was the thickest. Trees stood so close together that sometimes it was hard to walk side by side without squeezing through gaps between them. One Friday evening, my best friend Ryan came over to hang out because there was no school the next day. The sun was starting to set, so we decided to spend some time in the woods before it got too dark. We grabbed heavy flashlights just to be prepared and headed into the trees. We walked for about 10 or 15 minutes until we found a fallen tree to sit on. We loved just sitting there and talking about whatever was on our minds. We ended up getting so lost in conversation that by the time I looked up, the forest was nearly shrouded in darkness. We weren't too worried at first since we were familiar with the woods, and we planned to head back before it got completely dark. We turned on our flashlights and started walking, but I admit I was a bit spooked. It was so quiet except for the sound of our footsteps on the leaves, and the trees blocked most of our view, so we could only see a short distance ahead. After a few minutes of walking, we both suddenly stopped in our tracks. We heard the distinct sound of slow footsteps on leaves just ahead of us. The steps seemed to be coming from behind some trees about 15 to 20 feet in front of us. I couldn't help wondering why someone would be taking a walk alone in the woods at this time of night. I tried to stay calm, but just as we thought the person was moving away, the footsteps stopped. My heart pounded as fear and confusion washed over us. It was as if everything had suddenly gone silent. Standing there, looking at my friend, I felt a surge of intense danger. Almost immediately, I heard leaves crunching just a few feet behind us. Instinct kicked in, and I bolted in the direction of my house. As I ran, I collided with trees, struggling to navigate in the dim light. I could still hear footsteps behind me. I hoped it was Ryan, but I was too terrified to look back. After about 30 seconds of sprinting, the footsteps abruptly turned to the right and faded away. My fear intensified as I realized those footsteps weren't my friends, making me worry about where he was and if he was in trouble. Finally, I reached my backyard and burst into my house through the back door, gasping for breath. Through the windows, I searched for Ryan, hoping he'd show up. After a few minutes passed, my worry grew. My parents came downstairs and saw the panic on my face. As I explained what happened, the doorbell rang. My dad cracked the door open, and Ryan rushed inside. He had frozen in place after I ran, and, hearing more footsteps following me, had eventually decided to head toward my house. My parents called the police to report the incident, but nothing concrete came of it. Ryan and I still talk about that night, concocting various theories about what occurred. Part of me wishes I had looked back to see who or what was chasing me. But in that moment of pure fear, there was no way I could have spared a thought for anything but escape. To this day, that experience remains the most frightening thing I've ever lived through. It's a memory that continues to make me uneasy whenever I find myself near a forest at night. In August 2022, when I was 14 years old, during the later months of summer, I embarked on a camping trip with my friend Emily and my cousin Mark. We had planned this adventure long before the summer began. Our destination was a well-known campground located far out in the woods. We set out around 6 p.m., allowing an hour and a half for the drive. Upon arrival, we parked in the lot outside the wooded area and unloaded our tents, snacks, and camping gear. The main attraction was a trailer owned by Mark's uncle, nestled in a spacious clearing. The trailer was modern, complete with a living room, a small kitchen, a bathroom, and 3 bedrooms. The sunlight streamed through the clearing, offering perfect photo opportunities. The first day went smoothly. Emily and I spent time watching TV, while Mark took photos of us and the surroundings. A delicious dinner prepared by my aunt, a skilled cook, added to the pleasant experience. However, the second day took a sinister turn. The sky was overcast, but we were thankful for the absence of rain. Surprisingly, there were few animals in the vicinity. A lone deer and a couple of birds were the only wildlife spotted. This scarcity raised suspicions of a possible predator lurking nearby. As the evening approached, we gathered by the river, a short walk from our trailer. My aunt was narrating a tale, the details of which now escape me, when an eerie sound shattered the calm. From the other side of the river, we heard the unmistakable noises of cracking sticks and rustling leaves. "Is that a bear?" Emily asked, her voice trembling with fear. She had a genuine phobia of bears. Mark reassured us, saying that the sounds were too light for a bear. He suggested that it might be a deer or some other harmless creature. Just then, a blood-curdling shriek pierced the air, freezing us in our tracks. Goosebumps covered my skin and Emily recoiled in terror. The scream was like nothing we'd ever heard, part human, part animal, and entirely chilling. We wasted no time and dashed back to the safety of the trailer, the echoing screams haunting our every step. Panic drove us to pack our belongings into a large duffel bag and flee to the car. Once inside the car, doors locked and tension palpable, Emily broke the silence. "What on earth was that?" Her voice quivered, mirroring our bafflement. We agreed unanimously to abandon our camping plans and return home, determined to erase the entire ordeal from our memories. As we pulled away from the campground, my eyes were inexplicably drawn back to the woods. There, on the edge of the tree line, I saw a towering figure dressed in black with eerie white eyes fixed upon me. The sight sent a shiver down my spine, a memory forever etched into my mind. It's now October 18th as I pen down these words, and I've yet to share my chilling encounter with Emily or Mark. Mark's uncle decided to inspect the trailer, revealing a scene of utter destruction. I've always been skeptical about things like skinwalkers and the supernatural, but the events at that campground have shaken my beliefs. While the details of the story might differ, the essence of the eerie experience remained. The mysterious and unsettling encounter left an indelible mark on Alex's memory, casting doubts on the boundaries between the known and the unexplainable.